Welcome in, whiskey freaks, to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your number one attitudinal bourbon destination. I'm John Stark, and I'll be bringing you candid and sometimes irreverent whiskey news and reviews on the industry and the products they've been bringing us for hundreds of years. Today, we're diving into bourbon. Yeah, that's all I got today, kids. Just bourbon whiskey and lots of it. We're going to focus on nothing but whiskey and the whiskey universe that seems like it's rapidly changing and evolving every single day. And look, kids, I'm doing my best to keep up with it all. But all you have to do is sit back, relax, grab a pour, and then let's jump right on into another exciting, fun-filled, and maybe even a little bit educational episode here of the Blind Tasting Podcast. We've got layoffs at Brown-Forman to talk about. Or firings, to be truthful. We're going to talk about some cool new releases. I might delve into religion today, believe it or not. And I've got news on Irish whiskey that it needs to be addressed. And finally, I review Ezra Brooks 99 Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. So here's the deal. Big news at Brown-Forman. You know, the makers of Jack Daniels and Woodford Reserve and lots of other spirits for that matter. And I don't really want to dwell on the recent news, to be perfectly honest. I don't even really want to talk about it, but it's a big deal. It's also a big Debbie Downer, actually. But if you've heard about the layoffs or if you haven't heard about the layoffs, Brown-Forman, they just announced on Tuesday, January 14th, it's going to lay off, basically fire, approximately 12% of its 5,400 global employees and closed the Louisville-based Brown-Forman cooperage. That's where they make the barrels. The company cited strategic initiatives aimed at positioning itself for growth in the evolving global spirits market. Their CEO, Lawson Whiting, said, in 2025, Brown-Forman celebrates 155 years of delivering nothing better in the market. The milestone reflects our commitment to evolving our strategy, portfolio, organization, to ensure continued success. Today's changes will position us for future growth and investment. And I agree with that. I mean, the market is down, the industry is down, 12%, and I know this sucks for the people that are being fired. They've got to do something to adjust right now, and hopefully it's just temporary. The worst part to me is the closure of the cooperage. It's going to close down April 25th, and that's going to be 210 employees of this layoff or firing. And I did the math for you, kids, and 12% of 5,400 is 648 jobs being lost. That's 648 people being fired. And this is just possibly, and I don't have a crystal ball, but you can look at other major corporations, major employers throughout the course of history. This quite possibly is just the first round of layoffs. And when I say layoffs, I mean they're really firings, right? And this is possibly the first major company to make these kinds of changes in the whiskey world. Quite frankly, I predict more of this. Let me be clear. I don't want more of this. I don't get my jollies, hearing about layoffs anywhere for that matter, except maybe at a clown college because clowns I might could get behind layoffs at Congress and the good folks in Washington, D.C. And setting politics aside, I think we can all get behind that one. But what I'm talking about here in the whiskey world, this is a natural correction, and it's taking place after the pandemic and all the inflated numbers and skewed data that went along with it. So I think the industry is in for more painful announcements, at least for a while. I think we're seeing this stuff happen for a couple of reasons, and I know it's very complicated, but I believe at least a few things are carrying a lot of weight here when it comes to cause and effect. Most of it has to do with a few of the many challenges facing whiskey producers. Biggest issue is the long production times to age the distillate. We're not making widgets here. We're not building cars. We're not making cookies at a factory. We're aging distillate for sometimes 8, 10, 20 years. And the market forces control customer demand, consumer preference. Those things are hard to predict. Speaking of crystal ball, you almost need a crystal ball as a master distiller to know what will or will not be popular now and in the future. I mean, what will folks be clamoring for in 3 to 4 years? You got to know how much. You got to know what mash bills they might want. You might want to know the quantities you should distill and age. Now, we saw a blow up in demand that started prior to the COVID bullshit, and producers started ramping up production based on that perceived demand. But that demand, some of it was artificially created by the pandemic. I mean, seriously, it's really hard to predict how long or how strong it would be. Now, that somewhat artificial boost of folks being trapped in their homes, having nothing else to do, well, it even led to new hobbies like outdoor activities. A lot of people, we saw huge numbers of people biking, going to national parks, hiking, other outdoor stuff, and other things like cigar smoking and, drinking picked up big time over the course of the pandemic. I'm old enough to remember when super duper important essential workers, remember that crap? Essential, like the rest of us were chump change. So don't go to church or go see grandma and grandpa, but head to the strip club and don't forget to stop by the liquor store on the way home, right? Yes, sir. Well, anyway, I'm drifting here. I'm going to have to grab the steering wheel and I'm going to have to get back focused on the interstate. I don't want to get off on a tangent, especially as it relates to the pandemic. Kind of get fired up about some things, and that's one of them. Anyway, back to my main train of thought here. Folks, we're doing all kinds of things that they wouldn't otherwise do, and drinking, well, that was a huge part of it. But you got to wonder, what about other factors like online gambling, or what about weed? Gambling. You think that might be taking away from some of the spending on, well, everything? I do. I remember back, I talked ever so slightly about this back when Pete Rose died, and I think it's fair to bring it up again in this episode today. And because you're listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast, I do the work here, and of course I did some investigating. And here's what I found out about gambling, and this is crazy. Since the Supreme Court overturned the law banning sports gambling in 2018, Americans have bet nearly $450 billion on sports, and that's sports gambling alone. Sports gambling, that's it. FanDuel, DraftKings, those guys. And now sports betting is legal in 38 states. Sports betting is up a whopping 29% from 2023 to 2024. Yeah, that's crazy. The money's got to come from somewhere. I think it's possible some of those extra bottles of hooch, and I hate that word hooch, but here I am saying it. Maybe they're buying less booze in the bourbon whiskey space. Maybe. And how about weed? Cannabis, THC products, they're all on the rise big time. Check this out. It's legal in 24 states now, and 79% of Americans live in a county with at least one weed dispensary. Listen, this is insane. Usage in 2013 was just 7% of Americans, but in 2024, it was 15%. And prices? They've dropped dramatically for weed. The more legalized states jump up in number, it seems the price keeps going down. Now, this statistic blew my mind. The average retail prices for cannabis have dropped 32% since 2021. That's just over 3 years ago. They're down a third. So again, if you want something to chill out or unwind or enjoy alone or with your buddies, and it's cheaper than ever, some folks are going to turn to weed. It's just some common sense for you kids. There are other factors, but in my opinion, and I think I've got my finger on the pulse here, gambling and weed, they're big contributors to this shift. Oh, and I almost forgot. That doesn't even include the ready-to-drink beverages that contain THC. Cannabis beverages grew 11% last year alone. I say all that to say this, kids. Only time will tell. But I think when we check back in a few months or years, these are going to show up as some major players that erase some of that cash and, to some extent, some interest away from bourbon and whiskey. So we've got lots of new releases, kids. and that's good news. Well, mostly. If you love the Wild West and all that kind of good stuff, you're going to love this one. Wyatt Earp 13 Hazmat Edition is here for you. The World Whiskey Society just launched its boldest release yet, the Wyatt Earp 13-year-old American Whiskey Hazmat Edition. It's bottled at a mind-blowing 160 proof, 80% ABV. Can't believe I'm even saying that. This rare cask-strength whiskey is available online and at select retailers nationwide. Now, we know the term, and if you don't know, the term hazmat refers to whiskeys over 140 proof, and they require special handling during air transport. In fact, I don't even know if you can bring this on an airplane. But this 13-year-old flamethrower, I think it's fair to call it a flamethrower, it's got a mash bill of 73% malted barley. Interesting, right? 14.9% malted rye, 12.1% malted wheat. They're very specific with why at the World Whiskey Society. And they say the whiskey balances its high proof with rich flavors, featuring aromas of dark raisins, berries, seasoned oak, and creamy vanilla, while the palate delivers juicy dark fruit, warm oak spice, and a smooth custard finish. That sounds great. It's priced at $249, and although I'm usually not fond of hazmats, I'd like to try this one. I think the bottle looks cool, and I'm kind of a sucker for a cool bottle and the whole Wild West vibe, and well, it just really sounds incredible, honestly. If it's anything like they describe it. And guess what else just dropped? Yep, Woodford Double Oaked. Woodford Reserve, it's finally making its double oaked bourbon available nationwide for the first time. Now, you used to only be able to get it at the distillery in the gift shop. And it was launched back, I think it was 2015, as part of Woodford Reserve's Distillery Series. Double Oaked is created by taking fully matured Woodford Reserve Double Oak bourbon, which they had aged for somewhere between 5 and 7 years, and it's finished for an extra 2 years in a second heavily toasted and lightly charred oak barrel. What they say at Woodford, they say the additional aging, it enhances the spicier notes of the whiskey, complementing the sweeter profile of the original Double Oaked, because we got to just oak the hell out of it. The bourbon boasts flavors of maple syrup, chocolate, burnt marshmallow, and dried fruits with hints of chai tea, with hints of chai tea and clove. But now the sad part. Sorry, kids, but it's only bottled at, you guessed it, it's bottled at 45.2% ABV or 90.4 proof. Oh, Woodford. It's priced at $199.99, and that's for a 700 milliliter bottle, so they're getting you for the extra 50. That's a whole nother topic. Good news, though. I just checked, and a limited quantity still remains available at the distillery in Kentucky, and for shipping to select states. Not that many states, though. Don't get your hopes up. And please don't get me started on the 90.4 proof thing. One day I'll talk about that. I don't want to get fired up today. Woodford really, to me, is missing many opportunities by sticking to this arbitrary number. I don't know if they're stubborn. I don't know if they're foolish. I know some of the other expressions are stray away from the 90.4, but I don't know what their problem is. Whole different discussion. Heaven's Door, they've released Bootleg Volume 6, Wheated Bourbon, and it's 12 years old. So this is Bob Dylan's award-winning whiskey brand, and they've unveiled Bootleg Volume 6, and the good folks at Heaven's Door Spirits are calling it a rare and artistic release. Because why not? It's a very limited edition bourbon that blends 12, 13, and 14-year-old wheated bourbons finished in unique limousine cigar barrels. This is fun. I'm going to talk about this. These barrels, they're made from French Limousin oak trees, and those oak trees are in southwest France. They often use them to finish spirits like cognac, sherry, and, in this case, bourbon. The wood is known for its large grains and tannic texture. And so why are they called cigar barrels? Well, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. It's actually because they're kind of cigar-shaped. They're kind of elongated. They're like a tall, elongated barrel. and it provides more whiskey to wood contact. And they say in this case, it created a rich flavor profile with notes of spice, dried fruit, toasted oak, and a touch of sweetness from the wheated bourbons that they've used here. Sounds pretty cool. I don't know how easy it's going to be to get your hands on for a couple of reasons. One, there were less than 5,000 bottles produced, but it is available worldwide. You can get one, and here's the other problem. The low suggested retail price of $499.99. So they're very, very proud over there at Dillon's Deal. So we've also got great news out of Colorado. Stranahan's, they're the best-selling and most award-winning American single malt whiskey. They've unveiled their Founders Release, and it's a special edition 12-year aged whiskey at 120 proof. We'll go off to a good start right there, Stranahan's. The release coincides with the federal recognition of American single malt as an official whiskey category, and that's really a historic milestone. It marks the first new whiskey classification here in the United States in over 50 years. The whiskey is crafted entirely, this 120 proof whiskey, it's crafted entirely in Denver, Colorado, and the good folks at Stranahan say the Founders Release embodies Stranahan's 2 decades of dedication to American single malt. It's made with 100% malted barley, Rocky Mountain spring water, and aged in American white oak barrels. But there's more. The whiskey also underwent an additional aging in casks that previously held bourbon and blonde ale. They claim this results in a rich, full-bodied whiskey featuring notes of milk chocolate, pecan, nutmeg, and clove spice. So Stranahan's has been producing American single malt for over 20 years. They've been big, huge advocates for the recognition as an official whiskey category. Now that it's a reality, and to honor it, that's why the distillery is putting out this 120 proofer. And they're also hosting what they're calling Designation Day with celebrations throughout January at its Denver distillery and at their Aspen Whiskey Lodge, where fans of Stranahan's can come and sample some of their rare and exclusive whiskeys. Now you might be asking, Stark, why does this matter? Or does it matter? Or who the hell cares? Okay, so I'm not trying to go all academic on you today, whiskey freaks, but sometimes some cold hard facts are in order. And I got to say, this particular designation is a big deal. It's a very big deal. And the official recognition of single malt as an official U.S. category, it's a game changer for American distillers in a number of ways, really. It basically aligns American single malts with global standards. It elevates our reputation internationally. And this formal designation also strengthens support for the growing number of U.S. craft distillers. Remember, we talked about how many smaller distillers there are, here in the United States a few months back. The number is staggering, really. Well, now this provides all those little guys or the smaller guys kind of I don't know if you call it a competitive edge in domestic and global markets, but maybe there is a slight edge here now. And the new definition, this designation, it also ensures transparency for consumers. And for me, this is a biggie. How many times have you heard me curse a distiller for not revealing their super secret magical mash bill or hiding the age statement or even what part of the country or what part of the world their distillate came from? I mean, it really pisses me off. I don't want to have to spend hours on Al Gore's amazing internet to just sort of maybe possibly figure out or come up with a good guess about simple shit like that. Well, this new designation and guideline, it specifies exactly what you're going to get when you grab a single malt. Here, I'm going to give you the guidelines real quick. An American single malt must be made from 100% malted barley, produced at one distillery, aged in oak barrels, but not necessarily new oak barrels, and distilled to no more than 160 proof, and bottled at 80 proof or higher. It's just that easy peasy, and now we know. Most importantly, at least as far as I think, this recognition could actually boost the economic impact of the industry by fostering growth and also increasing export sales. And what will that do? Yes, it'll help those smaller distillers, at least those who produce the American single malt. It'll help those guys get through these crazy challenges that we're going through right now. And hopefully this is all temporary, right? But who knows? And along the lines of more good news, and I mean for the whiskey universe in general, Irish whiskey exports, they're up 13% in 2024. Now, we all know the whiskey industry is facing challenges at this point, with American whiskey sales suffering, craft spirits slumping. Even rare Scotch sales have dropped by 40%, according to an article I read. But Irish whiskey, they've bucked the trend. They've got a 13% rise in exports in 2024. Brands like Jameson, Bushmills, they continue to thrive globally and really are enjoying a tremendous success right now, as well as the many distilleries that now call Ireland home. And check this out. I had to look this up. Again, I'm doing the work here. I had to look this up because, well, it really caught my fancy. I wanted to know how many distilleries there were in Ireland. Over the past decade, the number of Irish distilleries has grown from, they had 4 of them in 2010. 4 in all of Ireland. They had 4 distilleries. And now they have more than 40 distilleries in Ireland. So who's buying Irish whiskey? Well, we are, Americans mostly. The United States remains the largest market for Irish whiskey, and it's actually right at 40% of exports. And here in the U.S., sales of Irish whiskey increased by 11% last year. Canada, they showed an even stronger performance, with exports rising nearly 30%. So even though the whiskey market, kind of as a whole, has had its ups and downs here lately, it really looks like Irish whiskey is still going strong. It's actually kind of gaining some more traction around the world, I guess you'd say. So now on to religion. Okay, it's not really about religion, but kind of. I ran across this crazy story a few weeks ago, and I thought, I got to tell the whiskey freaks about this one. Here it goes, and I'm paraphrasing the story here. I'm taking a lot of liberties here. Here we go. A 56-year-old Maryland man, and no, this isn't a Florida man story, but it looks like Maryland is clearly trying its best. A Maryland man named Thomas Campbell Bowling Von Getz, and that's way too many names, is facing a laundry list of charges after wreaking havoc at 2 churches on Christmas Eve. Local authorities are still scratching their heads over this one, and you will be too in just a minute. The chaos all started at Holy Angels Catholic Church during the 5 p.m. Mass. Von Getz reportedly walked up the aisle and dropped an onion. Yes, I said an onion, because nothing says baby Jesus like random vegetables at church, right? So things got even weirder when a concerned bystander followed him outside, only to be pelted with tangerines. Seriously, who brings produce to church? Is that a thing now? Look, I've been to Mass. It's all a bunch of kneeling and standing and more kneeling and more standing. There's no onions or citrus fruit. But wait, there's more. Van Getz, apparently a big fan of church hopping, showed up later that night at midnight Mass at St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church. This dude loves church. This time, he upped the ante by pouring whiskey. He poured whiskey into the holy water and started threatening parishioners. Okay, bro, that is not a punch bowl out front. So when folks tried to drag him out, he started swinging a whiskey bottle, but luckily he missed everyone. The congregation detained him until deputies arrived, and after a hospital check, he was arrested on multiple charges, including assault, defacing religious property. And the moral of the story is, keep the veggies and booze at home, kids. They don't belong in church. Now, I am kind of curious about what kind of whiskey he poured into the holy water. Am I going to burn in hell for wondering that? I don't know, but I'm just curious. It's kind of natural to wonder about that. I mean, there's a whole lot of things to wonder about on this one, but the whiskey, I don't know, inquiring minds want to know. I have a guess. You want to know my guess? My guess is it was probably Traveler. Definitely Traveler. And now, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. Okay, no children. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. Well, at least it's the moment I've been waiting for. The fun part. My review. And today, I'm cracking open a bottle of Ezra Brooks 99 Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Not to be confused with Ezra Brooks 7. Ezra Brooks 99 is what you might call a value whiskey. Look, as you know, I try my damnedest to give you as many so-called budget bourbons or daily drinker options, and that's along with some higher price, more exclusive stuff. But in this environment where prices are up, you got to spend wisely. So, is Ezra Brooks 99 going to be a good daily drinker for you? Does it have what it takes to be a budget bourbon? Well, let's find out. So the company that puts Ezra Brooks 99 Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey together is Luxco. They're out of St. Louis, Missouri, which is right across the river from me. The distillery, it's Lux Row in Bardstown, Kentucky, but I still think at this point it's sourced. I know they've got their own distillate aging right now, but I don't think they have either enough or the right mash bill. I don't know. Right now, I still think Ezra 99 is sourced. And naturally, they don't say by who or where. So the proof is, as I've said so many times, it's 99. So the age. There is no age statement. Come on, guys. Okay, so because it's a straight Kentucky bourbon whiskey, we know it's aged at least 2 years, so at least we have a jumping off point. I searched and searched the World Wide Web and the internets and all that good stuff. I don't know. It's at least 2 years. I've got a feeling it's probably older than that, but we don't know. My guess, it's probably older than that, but sadly, they don't want to tell us. I wonder if I called John Rempe. You think he would care? Yeah, I don't think so either. The mash bill. The mash bill is 78 corn, 10 rye, 12% malted barley. Oh, and FYI, and this is pretty interesting. This Ezra 99, it's charcoal filtered. And why is that interesting to me? Well, the filtering process for Ezra 99, it happens just before they bottle it. And I know we've all heard of the Lincoln County process where Jack Daniel's whiskey is charcoal filtered before aging. Well, Ezra, it's done after aging and right before bottling. So I found that to be pretty interesting. Kind of wish they wouldn't filter it. That's my preference, but hey. The price of Ezra 99, you can easily pick this up in the $750 for $20 to $23. And if I'm not mistaken, it's available nationwide here in the USA. I'm not sure about the rest of you guys, the rest of the world. I'm sorry, but I do know it's nationwide here in America. Okay, so today I'm tasting with a Glencairn, and it's my favorite Limestone Branch Glencairn, actually. It's my fave. And without further ado, I'm going to get a splash in my glass. Oh, and that reminds me, kids, speaking of splash, I'm going to start adding episodes to the pod where I do something called a splash and dash. Now, keep watching for it. They're going to be coming very soon. It's going to be my take on kind of a more concise review, but it's not going to be like some of those reviews you hear where it's like one sip bourbon. You know what I'm talking about, where you tune in expecting a breakdown of mash bills and tasting notes and other tidbits that might make the whiskey unique, or maybe a story or some cool history that would make it interesting about the distiller or something. But instead, what happens is the guys, they take one sip, they smack their lips, they giggle and act silly, and then you get something like, yeah, it's good. Okay, personally, I feel like when it's over in 2 minutes, that's what she said. When the review is over, even before it starts. Oh, and you get 3 or 4 minutes of commercials to fast forward through too. Isn't that nice? So the episode's 4 minutes long and you got 3 minutes worth of commercials. That's beautiful. So when the review is over super quick, you're left feeling kind of like you got screwed without dinner. Oh, you say that's a bit dramatic. Maybe it's a bit dramatic, but listen, I can't be the only one that feels this way, can I? So that's not going to be Splash and Dash. Of course, you'll have to tune in to see what it's all about. And like I said, it'll be soon. So hang in there, kids. It's on the way. Alrighty, let me get into this Ezra 99. Okay, and usually I start with the color, and today is no exception. I say it's something like golden copper, and I don't mean like a shiny new penny copper, more like a penny that's been in circulation for a year or two. And I also don't mean like a crusty old brown penny. Just go with me on this one, guys. And never judge the color by the bottle alone. You got to pour it in a glass to really get a good look at it. Okay. the color sometimes gives you an idea of the breadth of flavors you're about to put in your mouth. In my opinion, the darker the hue of the whiskey in your glass, the deeper the flavors. It's not always true, but it is sometimes, and really, it's true oftentimes, so it's worth mentioning. And guess what? I'm going to mention it every single time. So let me nose this thing. Let me get in here, see what this Ezra 99 is all about. This is great. So right off the bat, I'm getting like a soft wafting of caramel, vanilla, and maybe butterscotchy. There's a nice fruitiness in here too. I mean, I'm not getting completely wowed at this point, but it's decent. And there's nothing unexpected going on here, but there's also nothing crazy going on. The super interesting thing is I can smell this stuff from 2 feet away when I poured it. It's wafting out of the Glencairn. And I don't mean in an alcohol, there's no alcohol coming off of it. And it's 99 proof. So to me, that's a good start too. It's very enticing. Let me get a sip here, kids. That is a decent mouthfeel. Ooh, getting strong sweet vanilla. Some brown sugary goodness in here too. This is very sweet. Let me get another sip. Here we go. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I'm getting a creamed corn flavor in here, which personally I enjoy, like a creamy sweet corn with a smidge of dustiness in there too. It's very pleasant, very interesting. I need at least one more sip, if not two. Let me take another sip real quick. Okay, so the finish. I'm getting some spice finally. A nice spicy, peppery note. And the slightest bit of oak that it really blends well with the sweetness and that fruitiness I was getting. I think I'm also getting the slightest bit of nuttiness in there, like a peanutty flavor. And all these notes are playing so nice together. And this mouthfeel, this is just terrific. Especially for a bottle that costs $20. So you're probably wondering at this point, what's the verdict? Well, I'll have the answer right after the money spot. Are you looking to update your bar or man cave with some great photographs or wall art? Head over to Etsy at famousdocs.etsy.com and pick up some fantastic prohibition, bourbon, whiskey, and gangster-related photographs and wall art. Okay, kids, you got to check this stuff out. They've also got stuff like Al Capone, John Dillinger, Bonnie and Clyde, all kinds of cool photos over there. And if you purchase 4 or more items, you're going to get 20% off your entire order for a limited time. Go over to famousdocs.etsy.com, famousdocs.etsy.com, and that address will be in the show notes. So on the Blind Tasting Podcast, we have 3 verdicts, 3 possibilities. Are we going to keep it? Are we going to collect it? Or are we going to cull it? Now, to keep it means to proudly display it in your liquor cabinet or bar. This stuff is good for a pour anytime, but there's no need to stock up since it's always available. Collect it. Grab another bottle or maybe 2 since it's so damn good, or it just may not be easy to get your hands on. Lastly, cull it. Use it to loosen rusty bolts or sanitize a dirty toilet. In the case of Ezra Brooks 99 Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, I say, keep it. I love the strong sweet vanilla and caramel notes that mingle so perfectly together with those peppery notes and just a tinge of oak. The mouthfeel, at least my bottle here, it's so creamy. You'd think it was much older than what it probably is. And well, of course we don't know, and at 99 proof, it's right on the money drinking at that proof point. There's no surprises here. You get all the bourbony things that you'd expect and pretty much nothing extra. It's not a special bottle, but I say grab a bottle anyway. Pick one up at Sam's Club or your local liquor store. It's readily available pretty much everywhere, guys. And I've seen it in, this is cool, I've seen it in airplane bottles too. You know, the little 50 milliliters? They're like 99 cents at Friar Tuck's. This would be an amazing travel bottle, travel bourbon. In fact, I'm taking some with me to New York this weekend myself. You can throw it in your checked bag, easy peasy, and if something happens, you don't have to freak out about an expensive bottle getting destroyed or stolen by our good friends at the TSA. Whiskey Freaks, I hereby command you to subscribe to the podcast. Okay, maybe command is a strong word. How about encourage, or how about please? Please subscribe on Apple or YouTube, wherever great podcasts are found, actually. You can find the Blind Tasting Podcast. It's everywhere. We're in Japan now. We're in Australia now. Thanks to you guys all across the world. I'm glad to have you listening. I'm glad to have you sharing and enjoying right along with me and all the other whiskey freaks. This is so much fun. Last but not least, I got to give a shout out to the farmers, the distillery production guys and gals, the warehouse workers, the bottlers, and the truck drivers. We all know they're the ones that are making it happen in the bourbon whiskey world. So cheers to all of them. Well, that's all I got for today, Whiskey Freaks. Thanks for listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your #1 attitudinal bourbon destination.